Hello everyone, Just Podcast TV is here. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notified on new contents.
Episode 23. Comprehension. I won't make things difficult for you. How about this? If I'm lucky enough to win, then everything I lost to you before will be wasted. Just give me another 10 spirit stones. Barbo laughed lightly. It was as if Candida had profited greatly. Hearing this, Candida was so angry, as if Candida laughed out loud. Ordinarily, top-grade spirit artifacts were worth only around 10 spirit stones. Although Tranquil Heart marbles were rare, they were at most worth 15 spirit stones. Not only did Barbo want 20 spirit stones, he also wanted him to take out a spirit accumulation pill. He was simply trying to scam Candida. Barbo, fair and square people don't beat around the bush. I will, at most, add 2 more spirit stones. Candida, this is not appropriate. The Tranquil Heart Marble is a rare, supplementary secret treasure in the world, Barbo said and looked at Candida with some difficulty. Although the value of 12 spirit stones and 1 spirit accumulation pill was already close to the value of the Tranquil Heart Marble, no one would complain about having too many spirit stones. Candida acted like he hadn't heard what Barbo said. Also, this bet doesn't include spirit accumulation pills. The spirit accumulation pills were related to his injuries. He couldn't lose them. What? This is impossible. Barbo's voice grew louder in outrage. The 12 spirit stones could not compare to his Tranquil Heart Marble. You are unwilling? Then this bet will be voided, Candida sneered. He was the one in the lead now, and to be honest, if it weren't for Barbo's provocation, he wouldn't even want to bet on Amadeus. He really didn't have much confidence that Amadeus would be able to walk through 800 meters of Bronze Warrior's Lane. After a moment of hesitation, a trace of madness flashed across Barbo's eyes. He gritted his teeth and said, "All right, I'll bet with you." At this moment, Barbo had completely transformed into a gambler who was willing to sacrifice everything for the sake of making a comeback. It's the last 10 meters. Could it be that he really has a chance to break the 30-year destiny of the Academy? Outside Bronze Warrior's Lane, countless people could not help but hold their breath, hoping to witness a miracle. He was in the last 9 meters. The last 7 meters. The last 5 meters. Damn it! He only has 5 meters left. How can he be so strong? Stop! Unknowingly, Barbo's handsome face had completely distorted. His heart was screaming at the top of his lungs. He had already given 10 spirit stones and 1 spirit accumulation pill to Candida. If he lost the Tranquil Heart Marble, then his losses would be too great. He really couldn't afford to lose. Perhaps Barbo's prayers had worked. But now, Amadeus was at his last 3 meters. He drew his head back and spat out a mouthful of blood. His spirit suddenly became dispirited, and it was difficult for him to fight 4 hands with 2 fists. Given the limited space, his sprinting abilities didn't have much use at all. Up until now, Amadeus had no idea how many hammer strikes he had suffered. Even though he had absorbed countless elixirs, and his body had far surpassed gladiators of the same grade, he still couldn't bear it. Has he reached his limit? Oh, there are only 3 meters left. Master Delphi's nose twitched, and a trace of helplessness and disappointment flashed across his face. Amadeus was the closest person from the academies to the finish line of the Bronze Warriors Lane in the past 30 years. It would be a shame if he lost now. Oh, it was I who forced him. 797 meters is already rare. Just 3 meters more. What a pity, the crowd exclaimed. Barbo laughed wildly in his heart. I knew Amadeus wouldn't be able to pass this trial. The heavens have opened their eyes. Then he pretended to feel sorry for Candida and said, what a pity. He only had 3 meters left. Candida, it seems like I have won this round. Barbo, Amadeus hasn't given up yet. Isn't it a bit too early for you to conclude now? Candida coldly harumphed. He would never give up the bet of 12 spirit stones unless it was the last moment. You're only 3 meters away, Amadeus. You can't just admit defeat like this. In Bronze Warriors Lane, Amadeus thought, damn it, I am so close. Am I going to give up just like that? Absolutely not. Seeing that he was about to reach the end, he was unwilling to fall to the ground. Amadeus's mind shook, and he suddenly entered a wonderful state. The world was empty, and there was no one there. Both of his fists were moving irregularly, but they were still moving. He is actually still persisting. His will is very strong. Looking at Amadeus, who was still struggling in Bronze Warriors Lane, a hint of appreciation flashed across Master Delphi's face. On the path to becoming a gladiator, the bloodline talent was number 1. But a strong will was also indispensable. Very quickly, it was replaced by a trace of regret. What a pity. He's only 3 meters away. No. He's actually in the Enlightenment Zone. How is this possible? Enlightenment? How is this possible? Amadeus had crossed the 800th meter. Countless disciples outside Bronze Warriors Lane were shocked. This condition of enlightenment was simply a legend to them. But Amadeus had achieved it. The difficulty of the course had increased several times, but there rationality told them all of this was true. How could the words of Master Delphi be false? Monster. Terrifying, they said of Amadeus. He is a true monster. The three heroes pale in comparison. We must treat him seriously in the future. Even if we can't be on good terms with him, we must not make him our enemy. Many of the masters from the Servicemen's Peaks made up their minds when they saw Amadeus fall into a mysterious state. This isn't real. It must be an illusion. Barbo stared at Amadeus. His voice was somewhat hysterical. The repeated attacks had obviously exceeded the limits of what he could bear. At this moment, Amadeus's blessings of Mithraea bin Bronze Warrior's Lane changed once again. Thunderous sounds rolled out of his body, shaking the surroundings. The strength in his body surged. Streams of strong wind wreaked havoc in heaven and on earth. He was in a trance, and it was as if an ancient lion was roaring up at the sky behind him. Break it! Wind Bull Mountain Opening Fist! His strength erupted, and he threw out a punch. He was invincible. This is the Wild Bull Pulse Opening Fist of a transformation stage. An extraordinary master from the Servicemen's Peak couldn't help but rub his eyes, and his face was filled with shock. The system of combat skill was roughly divided into 5 levels: beginning, small completion, upper tier, perfection, and transformation stage. Most of the servant disciples could only reach the beginning level. It was extremely rare to be able to bring a combat skill to the small completion stage. As for those who had reached mastery, refining a combat skill to a perfection stage, there were very few. Of course, this was also because disciples of the order mainly practiced the yellow level martial skill. Although the transformation stage had the ability to transform the rotten into the magical, the power of the basic combat skill was limited. Even if one reached the transformation stage, it was only comparable to a yellow level inferior martial technique at the Great Perfection stage. And if one wanted to train to get to basic combat skill to the transformation stage, they would have to do so. As long as one wasn't forced to do so, it would have been much more difficult than training to get to basic combat skill to the Great Perfection realm. Without the yellow level martial skill, Amadeus knew what to do. He is too strong. In a split second, the force of 1,000 earthquakes exploded into a bronze man, sending him crashing into the ground like a meteor. In the next moment, the bronze body, which was 3 times harder than refined iron, cracked open. It was covered with thin cracks that were as dense as spider webs. The 10-foot-tall bronze man top speed, directly sweeping away the group of bronze men behind him. Amadeus's footsteps did not stop. He took a deep breath and dashed forward. The last 2 meters. The last 1 meter. Amadeus had successfully passed the 800 meters in Bronze Warrior's Lane. Almost at the same time, he staggered and fell straight down. The power of the transformation stage Wild Bull Mountain Opening Fist was unparalleled, but its consumption was also terrifying. It had almost drained all the remaining power in Amadeus's body. Adding the fact that he was already seriously injured, he couldn't hold on any longer. In the next moment, a disciple's figure flashed into Bronze Warrior's Lane. He supported Amadeus, who had used up all of his energy. Master Delphi looked at Amadeus, who was walking slowly toward the cave entrance with the disciple's help. He couldn't help but say "good" 3 times. Whether it was talent or willpower, Amadeus was one of the top disciples. Together with his heaven-defying perception, he said, "Ancestral Master, please bless us. We, the Elite Academy, have a successor. We are far beneath him." Tiberius and the others felt bitter in their hearts. Being in the same generation as this monster was definitely the sorrow of their lives. After the competition, Candida and Amadeus reconvened at the Master's place in Serviceman's Peak. "I really didn't misjudge you." Candida's face was full of joy for his pupil. If it wasn't for the fact that it was a public place, he would have laughed out loud. Soon, Candida's eyes turned to Barbo. Candida smiled complacently and said, "Now the outcome has been decided. I don't know where those spirit accumulation pills and tranquil heart marbles are, but I almost forgot. There are still 10 spirit stones left. You won't go back on your word, right?" "Damn it. Those are all my treasures." Barbo's heart was bleeding. He wanted to act shamelessly, but he only dared to think about it in his heart. Under the eyes of everyone, if he acted shamelessly, he would no longer be able to stay in the Mithria warrior sect. He gritted his teeth and took a small gray bag out of his pocket and threw it at Candida. Candida chuckled and said, "Barbo is really straightforward. With so little stuff, I won't go as far as to cheat you." Barbo's heart ached so much that he wanted to die. "Amadeus, just you wait. I am not done with you." At this moment, Barbo hated Amadeus to the core. "You're not bad. How should I address you?" As soon as Amadeus was carried out of Bronze Warrior's Lane by the disciple, Master Delphi walked up to him with a friendly expression. Is this really Master Delphi? The disciple who was standing at his side was dumbfounded? Among the 5 great masters of the knighthood of the order, the most severe one was Master Delphi. When he had ever been so friendly with a disciple. I'm Amadeus Pulcher. Amadeus's expression remained unchanged. His voice was neither humble nor prideful, as if the person in front of him was not the powerful master of the knighthood of the order, but just an ordinary citizen. Don't be arrogant, and don't be impatient. You will definitely become a great figure in the future. A hint of praise flashed across Master Delphi's eyes. He had such a training base at such a young age. There weren't many people in the huge Mithraea warrior sect, let alone the Victorii of the Enlightenment Zone, that were still in the middle of a battle. It was unbelievable that he could cultivate a basic combat skill to the transformation stage. It was even rarer that he could maintain his composure while doing so. After giving Amadeus a gentle smile, Master Delphi turned to the other servant and disciples and said, "The examination at this time has ended. All those who had failed will follow their masters back to the peaks. All those who have passed will register there and receive your identity tokens." After an hour, the nearly 400 servant disciples who had passed the test had all been registered. In each person's hand was a blue, palm-sized token with the words "Beyond Mithraea" written on it. From now on, all of you are disciples of the knighthood of the Order of the Mithraea warrior sect, one of the 9 great orders of the Roman Empire. All of our students are not to be trifled with. When we go out and explore the martial world, we will receive the respect of others. You must pay more attention to your training in the future, as well as every word and action. Go back and pack your belongings. Report to Greater Peak tomorrow. The Martial Emperor will welcome all of you. Episode 24, A New Beginning. The western region of the Apennine mountain range was connected to 1,000 miles of land. It was like a hydra lying dormant, its body facing north and south, crossing Ravenna, Milan, and Naples. The holy mountains within this range were packed with rows and rows of trees. According to the legends, there were 7 great academies housed under the 7 main peaks. This caused the training schools to have a great fortune for thousands of years. Not only did it not show any signs of decline, but it also became more and more prosperous. And underneath the 7 main peaks, there were 36 spirit peaks. Although these spirit peaks did not seem to be suppressed by the spiritual bloodline, they were still quite extraordinary. The spiritual energy was abundant. It was several times, or even more times than a dozen, than that of the Serviceman's Peak. Greater Peak was one of the 4 great spiritual peaks owned by the Elite Academy. It was also the place where thousands of disciples of the Knighthood of the Order were training in seclusion. Halfway up the mountain, there was birdsong and fragrant flowers, with green vines coiled around them. There were many houses with red walls and green tiles, and each house had a large courtyard. It looked more luxurious than the homes of rich families in some cities. In front of a luxurious and spacious courtyard located in the depths of the forest, a tall and slender young man who was wearing a white tunic stood quietly. He was Amadeus, who had just advanced to the Knighthood of the Order. Early in the morning, Amadeus had finished packing his clothes. He went straight to Master Candida. He hoped that Candida could take care of Atticus. In Red Reed Peak, he only had one friend, Atticus. Amadeus would never forget his friend. Candida would naturally agree to this. Putting aside Amadeus's talent, in the future, he was destined to become a great figure in the Elite Academy. Last night, he had won everything for Candida, and for this, he would give Amadeus a generous reward. He made a promise to him on the spot. As long as he were here, he would never let Atticus suffer any grievances in Red Reed Peak. Candida briefly mentioned Barbo. He warned Amadeus to be careful of this man in case he fell into his trap. Amadeus only laughed lightly and didn't really take it to heart. Barbo had been in the Mithraea warrior sect for many years, and he had a deep foundation. However, if Barbo were to find trouble with him, he would be the one to suffer. Dad, Mom, did you see that? I have successfully advanced to the Knighthood of the Order. Looking into the distance, he seemed to be able to see his parents, who were thousands of miles away. The next moment, Amadeus's hands moved, and he slowly pushed the front gate open. He was greeted by a large garden covering several acres of farmland and a small training field that was also several acres large. There were pavilions everywhere, with swaying palm trees and flowing water. The air was fresh. Amadeus was surprised to see this. Compared to this small courtyard, the small house he used to live in as a servant disciple was like heaven and earth. Even the house he lived in with the Poulter family was much worse than this. He played in the garden for a while. Then he pushed open the door to the house he walked in. The furnishings in this room were quite simple. It was clean and it was without a trace of dust. A few pots of orchids were placed onto the windowsill, emitting a heart-piercing fragrance. He casually opened the closet, which was filled with all kinds of tunics. He randomly picked out a purple tunic from within and changed it onto. It was made of silk and expensive fabric. It was light, and comfortable. He walked around gently and opened his bag. There were dozens of ingots, 3 white marble bottles, a milky white marble stone the size of an egg, and an inch-thick book inside. That silver was Amadeus's savings. The 3 white marble bottles contained upper-class elixirs, spirit-invigorating pills, purple elixirs, and countless born-forging supplements, elements that even genius experts would be interested in. As for the milky white marble, it was the currency of a high-grade gladiator. The book covered a technique called the 3 solar pulse-opening stage skill, and it was a low-grade yellow-level marrow-cleansing pill. The Mithraea Warrior Sect Elite Academy disciple of the Knighthood of the Order was training for this 3 solar pulse-opening stage skill. In addition to this, every disciple of the Knighthood of the Order had the opportunity to choose a combat skill. However, this required the disciple to personally go to the combat skill pavilion to choose one. He opened the 3 solar pulse opening stage skill and began to carefully read it. An hour later, there was a loud knock from the door outside. At the same time, a rough voice was heard. "Junior, come out quickly. I'll take you to the canteen." "Manias, wait a moment. I'll be right there." After putting away the 2 marble bottles containing the elixir and the spirit stone, Amadeus tidied his clothes and walked out. He opened the door to the courtyard and saw a strong man who was nearly 2 meters tall. He had a strong back and waist, and a rough face. He looked somewhat similar to Atticus. Manias could be considered a senior of the Greater Peak. He had advanced to the Knighthood of the Order for 3 years. Coincidentally, Manias was once a servant disciple of the Red Reed Peak. Amadeus's impression of him had increased greatly. Under Manias's lead, Amadeus appeared outside the canteen. It was a huge palace. There were hundreds of acres of farmland here, which could accommodate to tens of thousands of people eating together. It was not crowded at all. At this moment, there were more than 1,000 people eating in the palace. They were all elegant and gentle, whispering in low voices. They were very cultured and had a style of a big sect. "Amadeus, come with me." Manias called and took out a white marble plate. He began to pick food from the rows of food racks. Amadeus followed behind Manias. Just like in Red Reed Peak, the warriors here mainly dined on meat, but it was almost all the meat from exotic beasts. The medicinal effect of this food was several times greater than a refreshing soups. No wonder the servant disciples wanted to break through to the Knighthood of the Order. Just this basic benefit alone was much better than what was offered at the Servicemen's Peak. Not far from Amadeus, a beautiful female disciple pointed at him and said, "Miss Albus, that's the Amadeus we were talking about. He doesn't seem to be anything special." This was a woman in her prime. She wore a red stola and was full of youthful vigor. Although she was slim, she did not appear weak. Instead, she had the liveliness of a young girl. Albus Pubblius could barely be considered an acquaintance of Amadeus. She was Julia Albus, and she had changed into a blue and purple stola. Her skin was as white as snow, and her eyebrows were curved. Her pair of lively eyes were like flowing waves. Coupled with her gentle and quiet temperament, she looked like a naiad, carved from the fairest marble. Antonia, he is not simple. In the entire knighthood of the order, not many people can compare with him. Julia smiled lightly. Amadeus had been able to break through the half-step 60-year destiny of the elite academy, and even enter the Enlightenment during the battle. A genius like him was not a simple man. She believed that as long as he was given some time, his name would definitely spread throughout the Roman Empire. What a high evaluation! Albus, could it be that you have taken a fancy to this Amadeus? Antonia playfully looked at Julia. Miss Antonia, what are you talking about? I just think that he is very powerful. Julia blinked. She clearly did not expect her actions to be so charming and moving. Quite a number of the disciples' heart rates accelerated around her. On the other side of the canteen, a young man who was wearing a blue tunic was sitting calmly. There was a dignified look on his face. He was holding a wine cup in his hand, drinking the fine wine in it. He was looking at Amadeus. From time to time, a coldness would flash across his eyes, but his facial expression was constantly changing. There were 5 people sitting next to the young man. One of them had a distorted facial features, and his eyes were filled with resentment and hatred. He gritted his teeth and said to the young man in blue, "Seneca, it was him who hurt me. I will cripple that kid." Publius was Marcus's cousin. He initially thought that his cousin would be able to pass the Bronze Warrior's lane and advance to the knighthood of the order. When he did, he would have many helpers. Who would have thought that this news wouldn't come? Instead, it was the news of his limbs being crippled and his soul being damaged. He would never be able to train to be a gladiator again. The fury in his heart could not be imagined. Publius, don't you forget the rules of the sect. The face of Seneca, the young man in the blue tunic, turned cold. The knighthood of the order was not like the servicemen speak. Private fights were strictly prohibited here. Also, Master Delphi thinks highly of this kid. Publius's expression stiffened. The veins on his forehead bulged, and his teeth ground together. "Seneca, I have endured my injuries in vain? That's impossible. When did I ever say that this matter would be let go just like that?" Seneca shook his head. "But you can't act rashly. In a while, you should go and provoke him. Remember, though, you must not make a move in the canteen. Let him fight you in the arena. At that time, he will still be at your mercy. As long as he enters the arena, even Master Delphi will have nothing to say." Publius grinned hideously. However, at this moment, a big, rough hand pressed into Publius's shoulder. "Publius, don't use your talents for nothing. Just leave him to me. Don't worry. Once he steps into the arena, I will break all of the bones in his body to vent the hatred in your heart." Episode 25. no dignity. I'd rather die. Maximus is so aggressive. Could it be that he wants to cause trouble for someone? The disciples of the Knighthood of the Order looked at each other and whispered. There was a gloating look on their faces. Amadeus was drinking and eating a fat piece of exotic beast meat with one hand. In the past month, he had only thought about how to improve his strength. He had been a long time since he had enjoyed delicious food. The culinary skills of the chefs on the Red Reed Peak were nothing compared to those of the chefs in the Knighthood of the Order. At this moment, an iron plate fell from the sky. It brushed past Amadeus's temples and smashed into his dining table. A flash of anger appeared in Amadeus's eyes. He looked up and saw a big, burly young man with a rough face walking toward him with big steps, his face full of arrogance. Soon, a trace of doubt surged in Amadeus's heart. Who is he? I don't think I have offended him before, right? He thought about it for a long time. Yet he still didn't recall when he'd seen this robust young man. At this moment, Manias, who was standing opposite Amadeus, stood up and shouted, "Maximus, what do you want to do? Do you want to break the rules? Don't you know that newbies can only eat in the West District?" Maximus didn't even look at Manias. "Maximus, don't go too far. Since when did the sect have such a rule?" Manias's breathing was rapid, and his eyes were filled with fire. He had never heard of the rule that new people could only eat in the West region. However, his voice was a little low, and it gave people the feeling that he wasn't confident enough. Maximus gave Manias a fierce glare. He said, "My words are the rules. Do you have any objections?" "You're going too far." Manias was so angry that his heart was pounding. He clenched his fists tightly, and his veins could be clearly seen. Maximus fiercely glanced at Manias with disdain. Then he looked at Amadeus again and said, "Did you hear what I said? Get lost." Amadeus's face turned cold. He used his sleeve to wipe the grease from the corner of his mouth and stood up. His cold eyes swept across the overbearing Maximus. "Are you not convinced?" Maximus looked at Amadeus provocatively. Hearing this, Amadeus's eyes flashed. He didn't want to cause trouble, but that didn't mean that he was afraid of it. He was no longer weak and powerless. Before he could say anything, though, Manias had already pounced on him from the side. He grabbed Amadeus's right hand and gave him a meaningful look. He said, "Maximus, we can't afford to offend you. We'll leave immediately." Useless thing. He actually became the Mithraea warrior sect's disciple of the Knighthood of the Order. This is truly a disgrace to the sect. If it were me, I would have hung him with a rope a long time ago so that I wouldn't come out and make a fool of myself. Shame. They are the shame of the sect. Mocking laughter could be heard everywhere. Many of the disciples looked at Amadeus and Manias with disgust. They were ashamed to be on the same side as these two men, disciples of the Mithraea warrior sect. Gladiators could be defeated, but they couldn't be afraid of challenges. Coward? Shame? Julia, who was wearing a blue and purple dress, couldn't help but feel amused. The dignified newcomer king, the monster genius, who was even more terrifying than the 3 heroes and 1 immortal, was actually regarded as a disgrace. Was there any joke in this world more absurd than this? Damn it. Manias gritted his teeth. His eyes were flashing with grievance and resentment, but he had been suppressing it with great difficulty. He kept urging Amadeus to leave. Maximus sneered. I told you to get lost, not to leave. Are you deaf? Manias clenched his fists. His eyes were red, like an enraged beast that wanted to devour someone. At this moment, he was on the verge of exploding, no matter who it was. There was a limit to their patience. Maximus was completely challenging Manias' limit. I am going to bully you. What do you plan to do? Maximus' voice suddenly rose, and he glanced at Manias with disdain. Maximus, do you really think that The fury had destroyed Manias' rationality, and he finally exploded. However, before Manias could finish his words, Amadeus broke free from Manias' arms. His cold eyes swept across the insufferably arrogant Maximus, and he shouted, Where did this mad dog come from? How dare he bark in front of me? The entire canteen was as silent as a grave. Countless disciples looked at Amadeus in surprise. Mad dog? How dare he insult Maximus like this? Is he crazy? Even those geniuses who possessed 8th grade bloodlines would usually act cautiously when they first arrived on the peak. It had been many years since anyone had called Maximus a mad dog, and they were almost certain that Challenger had not survived. But soon, the surprise in their eyes were replaced by excitement. Suddenly, the sound of tiger and leopard thunder erupted from Maximus's body. It was like a sound of thunder, and it exploded with a loud bang. The blessings of Mithraea around his body rose rapidly, and his terrifying killing intent rushed towards Amadeus. Maximus was very famous, even among the nearly 10,000 disciples on the elite academy's peak. Now, a newbie dared to shout at him. This was definitely the shame of his life. You are courting death, Maximus kept roaring. His eyes were filled with anger, and his murderous temperament was soaring into the sky like an enraged beast. What are you trying to do? Don't forget, this is the sect's canteen. There will be no fighting here. Manias took a step forward and stood in front of Amadeus. At this moment, his rationality once again suppressed the anger in his heart. Looking at Manias, who stood in front of him despite his fear of Maximus, Amadeus felt touched. Manias was truly his friend, possibly the one that he had on the greater peak. They had known each other for less than a day, but Manias was so protective of him. Such friendship and allegiance was really, truly rare. Manias, I will remember your kindness. I will definitely repay you handsomely in the future. Determination flashed across Amadeus's eyes. He took a step forward and passed Manias in an instant. His cold and emotionless eyes swept across Maximus, and he said coldly, Mad dog, you are the one who is seeking death. For the past 16 years, he had been humiliated by his fellow brothers in his family. Even the servants had made fun of him. On the serviceman's peak, he had been humiliated by Marcus. It could be said that he had lost all his dignity. Now, he had finally gotten the chance to regain it. Amadeus swore that from now on, he would never let anyone trample on his dignity again. He would make whoever dare to humiliate him pay with their blood. Amadeus, you... Manias's expression became anxious. Apart from the new knighthood of the order and a small number of people, not many disciples knew that Amadeus had successfully broken through the 800 meters of the Bronze Warrior's Lane. Otherwise, Manias wouldn't be so worried. Manias, don't say anything else. I would rather die than have no dignity. Amadeus's voice was resolute and decisive. The path to becoming a gladiator required one to overcome all obstacles and to press forward with indomitable will, endure, and compromise. No matter how great the fortune surrounding an encounter might be, one's achievements in this lifetime would be limited. One day a warrior was on top, while the next he might become someone else's stepping stone. Without dignity, one would rather die. He does have some backbone. Having a backbone is a good thing, but the prerequisite that he must have is that he has sufficient strength. You're right. Those without strength are all talk, no action. Most of the disciples sneered. Sometimes one had to know when to advance and when to retreat. Otherwise, it would be impossible for them to walk the road to becoming a gladiator in the long run. What a strong man! Julia Albus's beautiful eyes lit up, and dimples appeared in her fair cheeks. It seems like Julia Albus has also been moved. Antonia, who was dressed in red, looked at her friend with great interest. Maximus was so angry that he laughed. He suddenly rolled his eyes and shouted at Amadeus, "Do you want to protect your dignity? I will give you this chance. Meet me in the arena, and let us fight to the death." Episode 26, Leo Marcellus. A trace of smugness flashed across Maximus's face. He gave Amadeus a provocative glance. He wasn't afraid of Amadeus's power. He was just afraid that Amadeus would be a coward. A disciple of the knighthood of the order was a registered official disciple of the sect, a cornerstone of his community. Private fights were strictly prohibited. Anyone who disobeyed the order would be severely punished. More importantly, if Amadeus kept holding back, Maximus would not be able to do anything to him. He did not have the courage to attack Amadeus under the watch of hundreds of thousands of his fellow disciples. "Amadeus, you can't agree to it." Before Amadeus could say anything, Manias tugged on his right arm and said anxiously, "No one else but the warriors in battle can interfere in the life and death arena." Maximus might use this chance to take revenge. The corner of Maximus's mouth curled up, revealing a trace of ridicule. If you don't dare to fight a true warrior, then don't brag about yourself. Amadeus's eyes glinted like iron, and he said with a calm expression, "Life and death arena? I won't stop until I die." "Good. No problem." "Amadeus, how can you?" Manias immediately became anxious. Maximus was considered an expert among the thousands of disciples in the elite academy. He had broken through to the 6th layer before the new year. He was not someone a newbie could match. Before Manias could finish his words, he saw Maximus smiling coldly. "You still have some backbone. Tomorrow morning, I will be at the high grade in life and death arena." Right at that moment, Seneca and the others walked over. Seneca licked his lower lip. His eyes were shining with a bloodthirsty light. He looked at Amadeus as if he was looking at a dead man. "Maximus, let's go." Seneca's voice was extremely cold. "You should cherish your last moments. Tomorrow, you will die for sure." Maximus laughed arrogantly. Then he took a step forward and caught up with Seneca. Publius, who was at the back of the group, glared at Amadeus. His eyes were filled with blood. He was like an enraged beast, and he swore to cut Amadeus into pieces. "Tomorrow will be the day of your death." When Seneca and his group left the canteen, the disciples who was in the canteen came back to their senses and started talking again. He actually dared to agree. He's dead for sure. Maximus has already broken through the 6th layer a year ago. Even if this newbie had some strength, the 5th Empyrean is his limit. There's no way he can be a match for Maximus. How stupid. This kid is really stupid. Amadeus is really impulsive this time. Maximus is not so easy to deal with. Antonia sighed. Although Amadeus was the new king, thanks to the Bronze Warriors Lane competition, he had just entered the knighthood of the order. His reputation was shallow, and he could not compare with Maximus. "Are we really going to lose?" "Miss Antonia, this might not be the case. Maybe a miracle will happen." Julia tilted her chin, and a non-committal smile appeared on her alluring red lips. Maximus was strong and intimidated even her, though she would have fought him in an instant had he challenged her. She did not have much confidence in winning, but Amadeus was not someone easy to deal with. He was only the top genius in the elite academy who had broken through 800 meters of the Bronze Warriors Lane in 30 years. Halfway up the greater peak, in a quiet courtyard nestled in the mountainside forest, Manias let out a long sigh and looked at the relaxed face of Amadeus. His eyes couldn't conceal the worry within them. "Junior, how can you be so impulsive? The life and death arena isn't a joke. Tomorrow, Maximus will definitely attack you ruthlessly. Amadeus, why can't you bear it? If you keep fighting bravely, you will suffer in the end." "Manias, I only swore to myself that one day, if I was able to make a name for myself, I would never let anyone trample on my dignity again. Manias, life is short and bitter. Instead of living like a coward, I might as well die a heroic death. Furthermore, in tomorrow's battle, I might win." Amadeus waved his hand and said firmly, He had full confidence in winning tomorrow's battle. Hearing this, Manias rolled his eyes speechlessly. Junior, although what you said makes sense, dignity is important, isn't it? But you should know better. You only have one life. If there is no life, then what? It's all over. Don't worry, I don't care a whit about Maximus. Amadeus couldn't help but feel touched by Manias' concern, even if he was laughing good-naturedly in his heart. Amadeus, you really don't know how powerful that Maximus is. He broke through to the 6th layer a long time ago. After a year of hard work, his strength has surely risen to another level. He is definitely not someone you can deal with now. Manias continued to persuade him. In his opinion, Amadeus must have no idea how powerful Maximus was. However, what surprised Manias was that Amadeus calmly replied, Manias, don't worry. I can handle it. Is Amadeus really confident in dealing with Maximus? Suddenly, Manias' heart shook. But is this possible? He's just a newbie. Amadeus, even if you can defeat Maximus, he is not alone. He is Viper and Seneca's little brother. When the time comes, you will definitely offend Seneca. Seneca is one of the top experts in the Academy's Knighthood of the Order, and his strength is unfathomable. Viper Seneca? A trace of doubt flashed across Amadeus' face. Suddenly, the imposing young man in blue tunic appeared in his mind. Could it be him? He seemed very powerful. The man behind Seneca seemed to want to eat my flesh and drink my blood. How strange. When did I offend them? Just as Amadeus was puzzled, Manias continued. The scariest one is Senior Leo Marcellus. He supports Seneca. You have offended Marcellus. I'm afraid you won't have a place in the entire Greater Peak. This man is really powerful. For the first time, Amadeus' heart trembled slightly. Manias, may I know who this Marcellus is? There are 10 warriors who are the top 10 disciples of the Academy's Knighthood of the Order, and Marcellus is one of them. And he is one of the best among them, ranked in the top 3. It was said that he was born with the 8th grade high bloodline and has a great deal of innate talent. Among the tens of thousands of disciples of the Knighthood of the Order, there are very few who compare with him. It is said that he reached the advanced pulse-opening stage long ago. Now that he has entered the 7th Empyrean stage, he is only a step away from completing the sect's trial. He is going to break through to become a disciple of the 9 Master, and Marcellus and Maximums have already been ruthless in their actions. Many disciples have died at their hands. 8th grade high bloodline. 7th Empyrean stage. A serious expression finally emerged on Amadeus' face. With his current training base, he was afraid that he would lose to Marcellus in terms of numbers. Yes, that's him. Well, I hope he will be more tactful when the time comes. A cold fear flashed across Amadeus' eyes. Currently, he was indeed no match for Marcellus. But he believed that if given some time, he could definitely surpass Marcellus in a month at most. A warrior named Agrippa entered the courtyard. He seemed sympathetic to the situation Amadeus had found himself in. "Amadeus, why don't you call in sick tomorrow?" Agrippa asked. When Amadeus remained silent, Manias opened his mouth and admitted hesitantly, "Although it is embarrassing, it's better than dying." "Manias, others are afraid of Seneca, but that doesn't mean that I am afraid of them as well. I have to go to the battle tomorrow. I refused to be afraid." Amadeus kept sneering. "Please, Amadeus, take a moment of peace. Take a step back and open up to the sky. Review your thoughts before you act." "Manias, you don't have to say anything more. I have my own ways. Amadeus, you should listen to your senior." Amadeus, who was a little impatient, immediately gave the order to leave. "All right, Manias, you can go back first. I want to conserve energy and prepare for the arena match tomorrow." Turning his head to look at the tightly shut door, Manias let out a helpless sigh. "Amadeus, why are you so stubborn?" He truly didn't think highly of Amadeus's chances in tomorrow's battle, but he also knew that he had steeled his heart to fight. Even if he commanded his martial skills to break the heavens, he wouldn't be able to do anything about it. Episode 27, Fight to the Death. There was a large piece of flat land near the mountainside of Greater Peak, where 10 fighting arenas were built with huge rocks. Each arena was as big as a few acres of farmland. These arenas were specially built for the 10,000 disciples of the Knighthood of the Order. They used it to spar with each other and settle their personal grudges. Those who trained to be gladiators liked to fight, and this was even more true for the disciples of the sect. Once they stepped onto the arena, their fates would be in their own hands. When the sun rose, thousands of disciples had already gathered near the arena. They were in groups of 3 to 5, and they were all talking spiritedly. A newbie actually dared agree to Maximus's challenge? I have to say, this kid does have some backbone. Courage? Backbone? No way. That's the kind of person who dies the fastest. I wonder how many moves this kid can resist from Maximus. How many moves? You think too highly of that kid. He's just a newbie. I'm afraid Maximus can kill him with just one move. None of the thousands of disciples had high hopes for Amadeus. He was a newbie who had just advanced to the Knighthood of the Order. He'd probably top out as a pulse-opening stage 5th Empyrean. As for Maximus, he was one of the top 1,000 experts in the Elite Academy. He had broken through to the 6th layer before the new year. The gap between them was huge. Right at this moment, an extremely wealthy young man shouted at the top of his lungs, "Let's make a bet, let's make a bet. Today, I, Asinius, will be the winner. This year, the rookie king, Amadeus, will fight Maximus. If you are interested, quickly place your bets. If you place more bets, you will win. I shall add that Amadeus has passed the 800-meter bronze warrior's lane." Asinius was a legendary figure on Greater Peak. It was said that he had a pair of heaven-bestowing divine eyes, and that his investment in this training had been a success. In just a few years, he had accumulated millions in private funds, and his net worth was extremely high. Even among the disciples of the Nine Master, there were very few who could compare with him. What? That Amadeus is actually this year's newcomer king? He passed 800 meters of Bronze Warriors Lane. How is that possible? Upon hearing this, the disciples of the knighthood of the order all sucked in a breath of cold air. As experienced warriors, they were well aware of the scariness of the Bronze Warriors Lane. Most of them wouldn't have been able to clear it. However, their rationality told them that everything Asinius said was true. Asinius would never lie about this, because it was very easy to find out the truth about this matter. No wonder he dared to agree to Maximus's challenge. I'm afraid there will still be suspense in the arena match later. In the last 80 meters of the Forbidden Zone in Bronze Warriors Lane, the strength of each bronze statue was that of a 7th layer gladiator. Even if one couldn't use any combat skill or if they weren't a strong sprinter, the combat strength of the bronze men was no longer below that of an ordinary 6th Empyrean gladiator. Anyone who was able to pass the level successfully must have a training base stronger than many 6th Empyrean gladiators. The odds that the disciple Maximus wins are 1-1. The odds that this year's rookie king Amadeus wins are 1-2. Asinius continued to shout. But judging from the odds, he was more optimistic about Maximus. After all, Maximus had been in the knighthood of the order for a few years. Not only had he reached the 6th layer, he had also mastered several yellow level skills. Fellas, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and place your bets. If you place more bets, you will win a lot. One is the strongest newcomer this year, and the other is a senior who has been in the knighthood of the order for many years. Between the two, the outcome isn't that hard to guess. I'll bet 100 gold denarii on Maximus. After all, a newbie is just a newbie. No matter how powerful he is, he shouldn't be a match for Maximus. I will bet 200 gold denarii on Maximus. According to the legends, his combat skills are the envy of the gods. I'll bet 300 gold denarii on Maximus's victory. Amid the noise, there was an endless stream of people who placed their bets. And most of them placed their bets on Maximus. As the saying goes, what you see with your own eyes is the real thing. They didn't know how strong Amadeus was, but Maximus's combat strength was obvious to all. On the huge Greater Peak, he could be considered a high-grade warrior. Right at that moment, a milky white spirit stone the size of an egg descended from the sky and landed on the gambling table. Wow! It's a spirit stone. Whose is it? How generous! Many disciples exclaimed. Even if they combined their wealth, they would not have been able to match up to a single spirit stone. In the next moment, a charming young girl wearing a blue and purple stola with skin as white as snow, curved eyebrows, and a pair of intelligent eyes that looked like flowing waves slowly walked over. Coupled with her quiet temperament, she looked like a naiad carved for the fairest marble. On her left and right, there were many young men and women of extraordinary bearing. Among them, 3 were especially eye-catching. One of them was around 16 or 17 years old. He wore a blue tunic, had a cold expression, a face that was like ice. He stood out like a crane among chickens, and a vacuum was faintly formed in the area 10 feet around him. No one dared to approach him. One of the other people was about 15 or 16 years old. His skin was as white as marble, and his facial features were handsome and angular. He wore a bronze set of greaves and armor that perfectly displayed his tall and slender figure. His temperament was cold and stern. It could even be said that he as cold as a moving ice mountain. His entire body gave off the impression that strangers should not approach him. The last person's face was as clear as marble. His eyes were like the stars in the sky, glittering and shining. His figure was tall and straight. Wearing a yellow tunic, he looked so grand and noble. Every step he took seemed to have endless magic, stepping on the heartbeats of everyone. Who are these people? Many of the disciples' faces were filled with doubt, but soon there were people who knew the answer to their question. These are the best of the rookies in this batch, especially the 4 people in the lead. All of them are geniuses of the 8th grade bloodline. They were very fast. Julia and the rest had already arrived at the gambling table. I bet a spirit stone on Amadeus's victory. I also bet on a spirit stone on him winning. Me too. I bet 500 gold denarii on Amadeus's victory. Without exception, they all bet on Amadeus. It was a common occurrence for seniors to bully newcomers on the Serviceman's Peak and in the Knighthood of the Order. As newbies, no matter how dissatisfied they were with Amadeus, at this moment, they had put down the prejudice in their hearts and joined him against these seniors. Of course, they all had great confidence in Amadeus' strength. They absolutely didn't think that he would lose to Maximus. These newcomers are too generous. They had worked so hard for several years and had only accumulated a few hundred gold denarii. Yet these rookies put all their money on the table just like that. There were even a number of them who took out a spirit stone and bet it in favor of Amadeus, which stunned the seniors gathered there. You don't know about this, do you? One explained. This batch of newbies can be said to be the luckiest batch in the past 10 years. The rewards for passing the test are so generous that it exceeds our imagination. What? There are marrow cleansing pills as well? What a pity. What a pity. If only I had been a late beginner for a few years. You? Even if you had gotten started a few years later, you wouldn't have been able to get first place. Amid the commotion, an exclamation attracted everyone's attention. They're here. Seneca and the others are here. They looked in the direction of the sound and saw a young man dressed in a blue tunic, who looked like a handsome young master, slowly walking over under the escort of Publius, Maximus, and other disciples of the Knighthood of the Order. There were also 2 beautiful female disciples who twisted their hips and waists as they walked. Maximus, you have to avenge me, Publius snarled. You have to break all of Amadeus's bones and torture him to death. Publius, don't worry. I will make sure that kid knows what it means to live a life worse than death. Maximus grinned hideously. Maximus's odds are 1 to 1, right? As he spoke, Seneca threw a small bag onto the gambling table. Ah, 10 spirit stones. So many spirit stones. Brother Seneca is really generous to be able to take out so many spirit stones in one go. Gasps of cold air rose and fell. Even some of the servicemen's peaks masters who had been operating for many years might not be able to afford 10 spirit stones. However, Seneca did not even blink. One could only imagine how rich he was. I bet 5 spirit stones on Maximus's victory. Following closely behind Seneca, Publius also made his move. Although his bet was not as good as Seneca, he still shocked many of the disciples. I bet a spirit stone on Maximus's victory. I bet 800 gold denarii on Maximus's victory. I bet 600 gold denarii on Maximus's victory. The rest of Seneca's underlings also made their moves. They bet 1 or 2 spirit stones at most, and 300 to 500 gold denarii at least. In an instant, many hesitant disciples also made their bets. Since Seneca and the rest dared to place such heavy bets, it was obvious that they had absolute confidence in Maximus. An hour later, a cry of surprise attracted the attention of the disciples. "Amadeus is here! Amadeus is here!" Amadeus, who was wearing a clean white tunic, walked slowly toward them, accompanied by Manias. His steps were slow and steady, like he was taking a stroll in the park, as if he did not care about the arena match at all. "Maximus, remember, we can't let that guy die too easily." A cold fire was flickering in Publius's eyes, and killing intent was surging in his heart. It was him. It was this little brute who had killed his second brother. "Publius, don't worry. I know." Maximus gave a ferocious smile. He jumped into the air and went straight up to the arena. His body tore through the air, and a stormy aura burst from his body. "Little dog, come up and face your